Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, which Madai is the father or the forefather of the Medes. They come from him. And Javan, which I believe is Yawan in the Hebrew, is where the Greeks come from, because the original Greeks were Japhetic. They were the ones that dwelt in that that region. So when you go into the name Javan, it will basically tell you. Let me just pull it up. Was it Greece, but also it was Ionia, right? Ionia or Greece, Ionia, Ionians, location of descendants of Javan. So at this point in time, a lot of the lands were named after those that went to dwell there. Okay, and so a lot of the places that you will see that are called, like Greece and so on, that's named after the original inhabitants of those lands. That's why the land of Canaan was called the land of Canaan. All right. And Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. And you'll see that some of these names are mentioned in prophecy as well, right? Gomer, Magog, Tubal, Meshach, right? But today, the original inhabitants of that land don't really dwell in those areas anymore. So when you see it in prophecy, it's referring to, in some cases, the modern day people that dwell there. Okay, so it's the land of such and such, but it's the people who are there at the time of the fulfillment of that prophecy. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, which is Spain. Okay, and it was called Tarshish because they dwelt there and called it after their name. And Kittim, which I believe is Cyprus, and Dodanim. By these descendants were the isles or the islands of the Gentiles, which is Gawayim or nations, divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nations. So the islands were populated, but they were divided by language, families, and nation. And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim. Cush are the Ethiopians, and Mizraim are the Egyptians. They were called Mizraim before. I think the Greeks are the ones who ended up calling them Egyptians or Egypt, but the original name is Mizraim. And Put, which I believe when you go into that, it shows up as like those of North Africa and Libya and so on, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba and Havilah and Sabta. And when we looked up Havilah before, it was that region east of Ethiopia when you cross the Red Sea over into that land. Look up here, Havilah. Here we go. So this region over here, and you have Ethiopia over here, and when you cross the Red Sea, you get into this area over here. So really the original inhabitants there of Havilah and so on were Hamites. And then obviously as time goes on, you have eventually you had Ishmaelites that came around that region and so on. So really today, when you go into these different lands, the original inhabitants are not there. A lot of the lands that were originally owned by Japhites, they're not in those regions. The original Israelites are not in that region, right? The original Egyptians are not even in where they used to be. When you go to Egypt today, majority of the people there are not really the original Egyptians. But when the Lord comes back, he's going to basically set everything back in its proper order. And Sabta and Rama and Sabteka, and the sons of Rama, Sheba and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord Yahweh. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And what that means is he was so mighty that being compared to him was like an accolade, right? To where if they said somebody was even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, then that person was a great individual. It's like today when people say something like, this guy is the Michael Jordan of baseball. When they say that, you understand that they're saying this guy is really good, because Michael Jordan was a really good basketball player. So when they compare you to him and whatever you're doing, it's another way of saying, oh, this guy is like a legend in his sport, or he's really good at it. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which is Babylon over there in Mesopotamia, and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, of which you have the Assyrians, and builded Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria, and the city Rehoboth and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. So these were some of the cities in Mesopotamia that were built, some of the first cities after the flood. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim, where the Philistines come from, and Caphtorim. And Canaan begat Zidon, his firstborn, and Heth is the forefather of the Hittites, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite. And afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. So they started to basically, wander out. And then eventually they end up in different areas, right? Down in Egypt and down in Ethiopia and in Canaan and so on. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, onto Gaza. And that was their west border, which is basically the coast where the Mediterranean is. And then from there, as it says, as thou goest onto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even onto Lasha. And these are the five, like the cities in that region, right around the Dead Sea or the Salt Sea. These are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber. So Shem being the forefather of the descendants of Eber, because Eber comes from the line of Shem. The brother of Japheth the elder, which Shem was the elder brother of Japheth. Even to him were born children. The children of Shem, Elam, which is where the East Indians, modern day Iranians and so on, they come from Elam. And Ashur, which is where the Assyrians come from. So that Assyrian Empire that took over the northern kingdom and so on, they are from Ashur, i.e. they're Shemites. And this is why when you have modern day, Edomites calling others Shemites, it's an interesting thing to say, considering that the Persians or anybody else that they're saying that to, for the most part, a good amount of those people are also Shemites. It's like calling a black person anti-black, and you're both black, so-called black. Anyway, and our facts had, of whose line comes Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and also Moab and Ammon and Edom, and Lud and Aram. And I believe when you look into it, they say that Lud was a forefather of those of Lydia. And Aram are the Arameans, which are the Syrians. And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, which in the Hebrew is Palag, which means division. And that's why, because for in his days was the earth divided, i.e. you had different of the lines, right, of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. You now had the subdivisions, right, of different groups by families and language and nation and so on. and his brothers, and and language, which we'll get into, I think, in a couple of upcoming chapters. And his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almodad, and Sheleph, and Hazar Maveth, and Gerar, and Hadoram, and Uzal, and Dikla, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. Once again, it's a name. All these were the sons of Joktan, and their dwelling was from Mesha as thou goest on to Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So after the flood, it was by these men and basically these families that you have the different nations that you have on the earth today. They all stem back to these individuals here. And that brings us to the end of the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.